A long time ago, when everything was all right with the world, and all animals lived together in harmony, there was a mischievous spider called Ananse. He lived in a village with many other animals, his family, and his relatives. The rainy season had come and gone, and all the crops had been watered to their satisfaction. Although this was good news for all the animals, this came with a lot of responsibility. Along with their crops grew a lot of weeds, and this had to be cleared from the farmland before they choked up all the important plants. Ananse was one of the village elders and decided to call up on all the village animals to come up with a solution on how they could help each other and lessen the load on everyone. Since all the animals were farmers, they decided that it would be a wonderful idea if they could help each other on alternating weeks by plowing, weeding, watering, or harvesting on one person's farm for a week, moving to the next farm on the next week, and so on and so forth until everybody's farm was worked on. Anansi conveniently put himself in charge of the program and made sure all his relatives' farms were at the top of the list, with his own coming in later so he wouldn't be caught out as biased. He also took it upon himself to make sure that everyone joined in the activities and helped out. After the program had gone on smoothly for about a month, Ananse was having a quiet sit down in front of his house and fell into deep thought.
You know,
he calmly said to himself,
I could actually use this arrangement to benefit myself. Last week, Rabbit fell ill and was excused from all farm work responsibilities. Although I felt sorry that he was sick, I also envied the little guy because he got to rest the whole time and different animals brought him food all day long. If I could pretend that I was ill, I could easily escape helping others out with their farms, and by the time I am well, all the work on my farm would basically be done.
So the next morning came up, and Ananse stayed in bed until his nephew came by to tell him that it was time to go to Pig's farm.
Oh no, I can't go today. My body does not feel well at all, son.
Ananse's nephew then went and told the others that his uncle was very sick, and because they all felt concerned over his health, they then decided to do Ananse's farm next and brought him large portions of food over the next few days, hoping he would improve. However, his condition didn't get any better. Ananse very quickly realized the benefits of his deception and therefore took advantage of the situation, continuing his pretense for a few more weeks. However, some of the animals began to whisper among themselves,
It is well that we are helping out Ananse with his farm, but when will he too give us a helping hand?
Ananse caught wind of the complaints from Parrot the gossip. Yeah, who else? And began to recognize that he would not be able to keep up this deceptive charade. So he decided to try and come up with a way to make it seem as if he was really very sick. So he called his relatives to come and gather around him for a strange announcement.
As you all know, dear family, this sickness of mine has been around for some time, and with every passing day, I feel worse and worse. In fact, I think these are the last days I will spend on earth. I can feel that my spirit will leave my body soon.
Of course his relatives didn't like the sound of that.
No, dear Ananse. No, it is still too soon for you to join our ancestors. We will call on the medicine man beyond Abame Mountain to bring you some herbs.
But Anansi protested, telling them that he was getting weaker by the day and that they should begin to make arrangements for his funeral.
When I die, I want to be buried on my one and only brother Kwame's farm. I have always loved his fresh and big yams, and I would like to be buried next to them.
Although his request seemed quite strange, no one can ever refuse the request of a dying man. So Kwame agreed, and Ananse continued with his preposterous requests.
I also ask that you dig a nice big hole that is lined in cloth so that my spirit can rest in peace and comfort. All my pots, pans, and utensils should be placed there as well, so that my spirit can prepare food for itself, even beyond the grave.
So his relatives adhered to his request and set about attending to it. All the time, Anansi pretended that his condition kept on getting worse and worse. In due time, he heard that the grave was finally ready, and the next time he saw someone approaching his house to check up on him, he pretended that he was dead. Despite all their efforts in trying to revive him, he did not wake up. So, they actually decided that he was indeed dead and proceeded to place his body in the grave he had so desired. The same night Ananse was buried, he crawled out of the grave, collected some of Kwame's yams, and cooked fufu with some of them. During the day, he would sleep peacefully, while at night he would crawl out of his tomb and feast on his brother's yams. This escapade went on for about a month, and eventually Kwame began to notice that some of his yams were beginning to disappear. He thought long and hard about who could be stealing from his farm, but he couldn't point a direct finger at anybody because everyone else had their own yams. On any other day, he would have suspected Anansi because many a time he had caught him stealing from his farm. But now that he was dead, he couldn't blame a dead man now, could he? So Kwame decided to set up a trap. He went to a carpenter that built him a few wooden scarecrows that were raised on a pedestal, which he poured sticky black tar on and placed them at different places on his farm. Kwame was sure that whoever was stealing his yams would touch one of the poles and get tar all over themselves or leave some kind of identity mark. So that night, Anansi crawled out of his tomb to commence his normal escapade. But imagine his surprise when he saw someone standing in the middle of the field.
Oops,
he thought.
I guess someone has seen me.
So he waited to see whether the bird would catch him out or fly away. But the figure was not moving. So he became curious and crept up slowly to the figure, but it was still not moving. The figure was somehow bent and small, so he thought it must be some kind of young bird who had fallen asleep. He then decided to play a trick on the child.
Your mother has been out looking for you everywhere. Supper is at home waiting for you, and your mom said you should come now, quick.
However, there was no reaction from the bird. And oh, how Ananse hated being ignored. The mere fact that he was an elder meant that he ought to be respected.
Am I not talking to you? Why are you not answering me?
Still no reply. All the heat quickly went to Ananse's head, and he became very angry.
How dare you not reply me? I will give you one hot, dirty slap so that you know that elders are supposed to be respected.
Ananse then gave the bird a big slap. But alas, his hand got stuck in the tar. He pulled and pulled, but it would not come loose.
"Let go of my hand this instant,"
he shouted.
"Let go, or else I'll give you another slap that will be so hard that you pass out and wake up the next morning."
And he slapped the figure with his free hand that got stuck in the tar too. Instead of backing down, Anansi got even more agitated and said to the bird,
"You are playing tricks on me now, but once I give you a good kick, that your head will soon be correct."
But with that, his left foot got stuck in. He kicked at the bird again with his right foot, which of course got stuck. Ananse was now well aware that he was truly stuck, and there was no way he could get out of this sticky situation. Eventually, with so much frustration, he started crying due to exhaustion and fell asleep. The next day, just as the sun was rising over the horizon, Kwame came eagerly to inspect his traps. The first thing he noticed was that none of his yams were missing. He smiled to himself with the knowledge that his plan had worked. But lo and behold his surprise! He found Anansi stuck fast onto one of his poles.
"Anansi, is that you? What are you doing here? Are you not dead?"
Without batting an eyelid, Anansi replied,
"Of course Anansi is dead. You're looking at his ghost."
Kwame was a very superstitious being, and as soon as he heard these words, he quickly took to his heels and ran away, shouting that the whole village should come and see Anansi's ghost. The villagers gathered around him to hear more, and he explained the sight he had seen. Of course, many of them were not convinced and decided to follow Kwame to his farm to see the sight for themselves. That's if the so-called ghost was still there. And to their surprise, there Anansi was, glued fast to the pole.
What are you doing here, Elder? It is not possible that you are alive. We buried you ourselves.
"Oh, come on. It is not Anansi you are looking at. It is his ghost,"
cried out Anansi. He was now beginning to feel uneasy and wanted to get out of his situation. Literally. He now understood when his father would constantly warn him whenever he would disobey him and join in village politics, which his father hated.
"Be glad you are unknown, for when you are known, you will wish you weren't."
Some of the villagers, who were just as superstitious as Kwame, began to run away. But Anansi called them back.
"Why are you running away? Am I not one of you? Can't you see that I am in a terrible situation here? Help me out."
One of the braver animals, Dog, then came forward and said to Anansi, "What kind of help do you need?"
"Can't you see that I am stuck? I need you to pull me free."
So some of the animals gathered up the courage to help Anansi, while he, as his usual self, gave them instructions on what to do.
"Pull here. Pull there. A little more to this side. Pull a little harder here. No, not there. Move to the other side."
But one of the villagers, who had been pulling for a while, stopped and scratched his head.
"Wait a minute,"
he said.
"This can't be a ghost. This must be Anansi, who is not dead at all. Since when are we able to touch ghosts? And if he were a spirit, he shouldn't be stuck to a pole at all but walk right through."
They all then stopped and agreed with the fellow.
Yes, How can a ghost be giving us instructions on when to pull and when not to pull? How is a ghost even able to feel anything?
They then started hitting Ananse with sticks and stones, throwing mud on him, spitting in his face, and raining insults on him as they finally realized the mischief that he had been up to for months. After a while, Kwame took pity on his brother and asked them to stop and help him off the pole. The village elders then decided to punish Anansi by banishing him away from the village, telling him never to return.